Welcome to The Change Agent, the podcast that aims to help you become a more effective leader, project manager, and high-impact contributor for your organization. Each and every episode gives you actionable strategies and perspectives in leadership, project management, and team building so that you and your team can deliver real value, exceed expectations, and rise above the rest. Follow the show as every week I try to release new content. I hope you're looking forward to today's episode, and if so, let's get ready to lead. Welcome back and welcome to episode 8. My name is Eric, and in this episode, we're going to be going from plan to action, executing the project with purpose. Now, in the last episode, we talked about the beginning of the project, its kicking off phases and all that good stuff. But now we're going to be stepping into the phase where everything gets real. It's the execution phase. And this is where leadership shows up in the everyday, everything that you do, where plans become progress. Things kind of get messy, as they say. And let me tell you from experience, they do get messy. Because while your plan may be super solid, we have realized from other episodes and from our own experience that plans rarely go as planned. Real-world execution always requires some type of good leadership, some adaptability, and relentless focus on the value that you're trying to deliver. And it's important that you keep those things in the forefront of your mind. So let's dive into what execution means, how to do it well, and how the leadership mindset that you're going to have will help you navigate these phases with purpose. So what execution really is, okay, what does it look like to execute on a project? In traditional terms, from my perspective, execution is a phase where the project team carries out the work defined in the plan to meet the project's objectives. It's pretty straightforward, not rocket science. But if we look at this from a more microscopic lens, if you will, looking through something like the PMBOK 7th edition, we're going to find that execution is more than just checking off tasks on a list. We don't want to just do that. It's about leading the team through uncertainty. It's about managing evolving stakeholder expectations. It's making quick decisions while preserving the alignment of our team against the tasks that were assigned. And it's consistency in focusing on the value over activity. There's a big difference between doing stuff, which is activity, and doing stuff that matters, which is the value. Okay. A perfect plan doesn't always guarantee perfect execution. This is the phase where you have to lead. Okay. It's not just managing. It's not just, doing things I'm sighing, but I'm really serious. It's not just going in there about, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z today because that's what a book told me to do, or that's what Eric told me to do. It's what you designed, right? In your plan that you made in your initiation phase of how you're going to lead these things and what your leadership style is, that's what you're going to do. You need to have the ability to motivate the people that are around you, adapt to the situations around you, and communicate, because it becomes more valuable than any other tool and any other toolbox you might have. Okay. So it's very important we do that. And when I talk about leading your team through uncertainty, you can go back and look at other podcasts called Leading Through Uncertainty, but in season 1, to refresh that, what that means is when your uncertainty kills motivation for all intents and purposes. When the team doesn't know what they're supposed to do, they'll do nothing. When a person doesn't know what they're supposed to do, they'll do nothing. Think about the time that you've been like, well, what am I supposed to do today? I guess in lieu of whatever it was I was supposed to do, where it's been directed by a manager, I'll just do what I have to do until they tell me what to do. Maybe that's the case. Maybe you're a super motivated individual and you'll say, what was I supposed to do today? No one gave me any clear direction. So in that case, I'll do something that delivers value for the company or the organization on my own. That also is very good. The problem with that is that what you consider to be a valuable set of actions may not always deliver exactly what the company or organization is intending. I've had that happen before where I've said, uh, so and so wasn't around, and so I decided I'm going to do this because I think it will benefit us. And then it turns out that that was a few hours wasted. You're going to want to make sure you're managing evolving stakeholder expectations. The stakeholders are, if especially if they're changing, but they wake up on the different sides of the bed some mornings, or sometimes they get requirements changes that are handed down from their bosses, which requires changes to you. And this is going to require that you make quick decisions to preserve the alignment of the work that you're doing. If a stakeholder comes back and says, hey, instead of you doing this, we need you to do this, then you're going to need to be able to adapt to that. You're going to need to make sure that you are prepared and your team is prepared to adapt. And then you're going to focus on that value over doing stuff. Instead of saying we're going to do these 30 things to make sure that your task is completed and we deliver the deliverable that you're expecting, what you really need to be doing is thinking, how am I going to do this the most efficient manner as quickly as possible so that I can realize the value as quickly as possible. Okay. Next, we're going to lead with purpose. Now, execution is where your leadership is going to be tested the most. Planning, especially when you're on your own and you have other experts around you, is not terribly difficult, to be honest. You list uncertainties as uncertainties and you figure out how to address those. And you come up with a schedule, and you might have a Microsoft project expert in your office, which alleviates the need for you to learn how to do Microsoft project. And so maybe you're not building schedules. Maybe you're not building cost narratives. Maybe you're not building resource plans and stakeholder maps and all this other stuff that would typically be done by the PM. Now you're just trying to, in the beginning phase, you're really just kind of sailing. The wind is blowing you. But when it comes to execution, though, all of those resources are typically gone, right? You don't have someone who's sitting behind you all the time telling you, put fewer resources against the project because you're burning hot on the money. Put more resources on the project because you're burning cold or cool on the project. Your overrunning is hot. Your underrunning is cool. Maybe your critical path is in danger from delivering a project, which means all of your tasks that are needed to be required to deliver a project are in danger because of a delay or something like that. So whatever the case may be, you don't have all of the resources typically to apply to various situations when you're in execution that you did when you were in the planning and proposal submission phase. Okay. So your team at this point is really going to be watching you, and the team, is not only the people that are working for you, but these are your stakeholders that you're delivering to. So maybe your customer, and they're looking for clarity. They're all looking for stability. They're all looking for direction. And if you don't lead with purpose, then you're just going to create confusion, fear, burnout, and all that other stuff that's going to happen. So there are a few reminders that you can keep in the back of your mind or up in the front of your mind if you want, as to how you can best manage these things as a project leader. Number one, you're going to want to be visible. Okay. You're going to want to be available. Don't just disappear behind the emails or the dashboards. Lead out in the open. Be seen. Be available. When I first took over as a project manager for a large $16 million contract with the United States Army, one of the first things that my new stakeholder told me was that the previous company that was working with them, their project manager or PM was never in the office. They never saw them in 5 years. Now, I take that with somewhat of a grain of salt. I would imagine that they probably did see them to some degree, but not every day. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said it. The truth of the matter is that when I took over, I decided that would be because that was something that the stakeholder conveyed to me, something that bothered them. And so I made sure that whatever it was that I did, it was not going to be that. Okay. So be visible, be available to your customers, to your stakeholders, to all your managers, to your product owners, whatever it may be. Once you start doing that, you're going to see the project start gaining momentum. You're going to want to maintain that momentum. Progress creates confidence. As we start moving forward and without objection, which means you haven't been told by your customer that you're jacking it up, you're going to start getting confidence that you're doing it right because you've gone through the first month. And typically in that first month, You've given some type of status report. You've given some type of business report. You've talked to your managers about how the projects are going. That's going to create confidence when you get through those gates and you realize, hey, I might know, I might actually make this, and this might actually be kind of fun. So you're going to want to get through that, and you want to maintain that momentum. Removing roadblocks quickly is important, and you need to make sure that you take the time to celebrate the wins, whether they're big or small ones. It doesn't matter. So in the very beginning of the phases of the project, if you deliver a successful document, it's a deliverable. It might be a monthly status report. It might be a financial report. It might be a technical report. It might be a scientific report. Whatever it is that you're delivering, it might be a piece of software or hardware. When you deliver that in the first moments, and when I say moments, I mean some time, right? Days, months, or years. When preferably not years. Some in the beginning phases of your project, when you deliver something, celebrate that. Then you're going to, in parallel to that, you're going to want to be setting the emotional tone. The energy that you project from your project is going to be contagious. If you're calm and focused in situations, then your team will likely be as well. If you're nervous and indecisive, your team will likely be as well. Anything other than calm and collective is probably going to be problematic for you. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're not doing those things. And to help do that, you want to be able to do the last part, is communicate relentlessly, making sure that you are telling everybody everything you can when you can. Don't be overbearing, meaning don't every 5 minutes is way overburdened, right? Don't do that. It's overkill. But if you say you're going to deliver something every week, deliver it every week. And when something changes from the baseline, notify your stakeholders. Okay. You may be retired. You may become tired of repeating yourself, and you may feel like that you are, but repetition does bring clarity to people. And it certainly alleviates the idea that someone can claim that they didn't know what was going on because you told them all the time, right? So one of my favorite lessons is this: if you don't manage your way through execution, uh, which you shouldn't do, you need to be leading your way through execution. Managing through execution is, I've got a box or a book, rather, of things that someone needs to do. Eric needs to do task A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then he's off to the next one. And in the middle of that, if anything happens, we'll let Eric or someone else figure it out. No, that's not leadership. That's management. That's boss work. You're a leader. Okay. Now you're leading your team through it. You're going into the team on the weekdays, on Mondays, Tuesdays, whatever the cases are, and you're asking them how the project's going, what their tasks are, what do they need, anything I can do for you. And you keep this up, and you make it consistent, and you make it open. Okay. Great. We're through that part. Now let's look at scope management, okay, in the real world compared to what you proposed. Because oftentimes, as I've said before, proposal language is not necessarily mirrored in execution. Now, because in execution, scope does get challenged. Your product owners, your stakeholders, your customers, they may often try to inject, hey, can we add this to this? Can we do this extra thing? Can we add an additional feature? Can we make the icon blue? These are all things that are impromptu. Okay. They come in from the left and right side, and you don't see them coming. They may just walk into a cube or your office and say, I'd like to actually change something, right? And they think it's just that fast and informal, but it's not. And suddenly what was approved to begin with, as far as what you were going to be delivering, has now started to shift. And this is called scope creep. Scope creep is really dangerous to a project manager if you don't manage it, because it starts to increase your cost. It increases the time in which you have to deliver a particular product. It may even require additional resources, which then again causes rise in costs. And you'll be tempted to say yes to just about anything that they say, because you have this innate nature to try to please the stakeholders and the people that you're working with. But in good leadership during execution, it's not about that. It's about knowing when to say not yet or it's not in scope, which is a gentle way of saying no. Don't be afraid to say no. You can tell your customer, I would appreciate it if we could figure out how to get that into scope by having that redone into the contract and create a contract modification. If that doesn't happen, I'm afraid that that's not in scope and I can't really actually perform that. Okay. So but there's a difference. There's a thing that you need to do here. When a customer comes in here and starts asking for specific scope changes, you need to go back and revisit your scope statement and the statement of work in the contract to make sure that it's not in scope. Okay, that's your anchor. And then if it is, and you tell the customer that you would like to have an amendment to the modification to the contract, you can ask for that change to be done, and you're going to track that change transparently. You're going to have it in the change requests. It'll go to the CCB, which is a change control board. They'll approve it. They'll make sure that it doesn't impact the rest of the project, and then they're going to approve it. And you're going to evaluate these changes by their value and impact. If somebody comes to you and says, I would like the website to have green buttons over blue buttons or red buttons over green buttons, and their premise is that it's for those users that may be colorblind or if there's some accessibility issue, and you go back and look and realize that, yeah, that doesn't exist, or that it doesn't really map to the requirements of what you're trying to accomplish, or maybe your website is already compliant in those things, then you need to evaluate that. And then you're going to go back and remind your team that more does not always mean better. The more things you do does not mean better. Better means that things are done aligned more to the goals of the project. Okay. Your job is to protect the project's purpose, not just a plan. And so it's important that you go through and look at what you're trying to achieve, why you're trying to achieve it, and protect those things. Of course, this all comes with engaging your stakeholders. You can't possibly have gone through all of this without talking to them. And you're going to want to remember that all the stakeholders you identified in the plan, are they being engaged? Now is the time to deliver on that engagement. And so if your stakeholders have been engaged, great. One common mistake that I often see is that an individual or a group or a project manager will develop a stakeholder engagement plan, and they'll identify a high influence, high power stakeholder, Mr. Adams. Okay, he's out there. I like using that name because it's easy. He's out there. He's in charge. He controls the money. He's the one that we got to kiss to, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it. And so you only engage this individual. But that individual doesn't actually do the work, right? They rarely do. And they pass that off to someone else who's a stakeholder in your organization, in your project. And what you do is you go and you talk to stakeholder A, who's the boss, Mr. Adams, and then you walk away and you leave the other people alone. You don't have anything to do with them. You just expect that your stakeholder will deliver the message to their subordinates, who are also your customers. And then you find that there's confusion or that there's a lack of action, and you're going to wonder why. In reality, what you need to be doing is going to stakeholder A, which is Mr. Adams, and he's the boss, and telling him what you want to do, and then finishing that with, if it's okay with you, I want to engage the rest of the team on your end to ensure that they know everything's going on. That's a really good tactic to not only show the customer that you understand exactly what the new requirements are, but that you're willing to make sure that you're including his entire team or her entire team into the conversation without their needing to do. You're relieving them of some mediating tasks, medial task, whatever the word is, in notifying them that you're going to be doing something else. So get out there and engage those stakeholders from top to bottom. Now, during this execution, these types of things can make or break you, this engagement of stakeholders. Why? Because stakeholders want updates and they want visibility. I don't care who you are. If you ask somebody to do something, you're curiously interested in whether or not they've completed that and if they completed it to the standard in which you've asked them to. They're watching the burn rate, which is How much money are you burning per hour, per week, per month, per year against what the baseline is? And there's a way to measure that variance, right? We talked about that in the last episode, the variance. If you start burning hot, which means you're burning more money than you can afford throughout the project, and you'll end up needing more money, bad. If you end up running a bit cool and you're overrunning, which means your variance is in the positive, you have money left over, which means you can either work additional hours, perform additional tasks, or hire an additional resource. Okay, so you want to keep that out. They're looking at the timelines, the schedule. Okay, they're looking at whether or not you're performing against what you proposed. Are you going to deliver task A or feature A or story A on May the 9th or not? Are you going to deliver it later or sooner? Okay. And you're going to want to, they're going to be looking at the results of those as well. They're going to be looking at what you delivered compared to what they're asking for. And if they feel like they're ever out of the loop, or they just can't figure out what the actual answers are, they're going to start filling in these gaps of knowledge with assumptions. And that is not always a positive thing. You do not want your stakeholders filling in gaps of information with assumptions that they make, because there are two things that they're going to do. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to fill up the assumptions with things that's more positive to them on their side, which is not positive, always positive to you. And they're going to be based on non-evidence. They may be things that they don't know, and so they're going to build assumptions on some not complete information. Now, here's some ways you can stay in front of it. Maintain a steady communication rhythm. If you say that you're going to do weekly updates, do weekly updates. If you're going to have a steering committee, have one. If you're going to have a retrospective, have a retrospective. If you're going to have a product demo, you're going to have a product demo. If you're going to invite them into the building, invite them to the building. Whatever works for them, whatever works for you, emails, text messages, phone calls, video calls, whatever it is, make sure that communication is notated and that it's followed consistently. Next, you're going to want to be transparent about the progress and the challenges. It does no good for you to hide anything from your customer about the progress or the challenges that you're currently facing. Hiding anything or omitting anything in a project as a project manager is equal to lying, and you'll be I can't even imagine what's going to happen. But don't do it. Okay. Always be transparent. Always tell them what's up. Tell them what's going on and where your challenges lie so that they can help you. Right. And by creating this relationship, you're going to have the stakeholders be encouraged to help you figure out these obstacles. Trust grows when you don't hide the tough stuff. Okay. Then you're going to want to ask for feedback. After you've been communicating, you're going to want to ask for feedback, and you're going to want to make that feedback seen and heard amongst the entire team. So you're not just going to manage your stakeholders. As you can see from the conversation we're having, you're not just managing your stakeholders, you're leading your stakeholders as well. Okay. So you're leading a team, you're leading your stakeholders. But eventually things will happen and you'll have issues and you'll have risks and all this other stuff. So how do you deal with that? Now, no matter how great the planning was, things will eventually go wrong. It's not failure. It's the reality of executing anything that's meaningful. Your project is meaningful. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be working on it and people wouldn't be paying money for it. So obviously it's worth doing. I forgot who said this, but the quote is, anything worth doing is, something like that. So some quick tips on what matters most is how you respond. Here's how you do it. You're going to lean on your risk register and you're going to review it weekly or monthly with your team. I wouldn't recommend monthly. I'd recommend this would be a weekly thing. Okay. Maybe even a bi-weekly thing every 2 weeks. Okay. Look at the risks, see what's coming, and review it. Okay. You're going to stay proactive. Don't let your risks turn into emergencies because you didn't revisit those plans. Get those risks out in front, keep an eye on them, track them, assign an owner, have that person or persons come back to you and tell you what the statuses of those are. And then you're going to create a safe space for your team to raise concerns early. You're going to want to make sure that your team feels like it's a safe place to talk about the things that bother them and the risks that they're going through, and for a good example is if you're in a team sync or what was previously known as a daily stand-up, you're going to want to have the ability to project the environment, the command climate, if you will, to your team so that they understand that it's okay to bring up, it's a crappy day, Miss Radams. It's a crappy day. Nothing's working out. We've got this and this and this. And so you want to make sure it's safe for them to have that ability to feel like they can tell you negative things. Okay. And when issues do arise, be very decisive. This is possible because you're going to already have a plan. So if you have a plan and you have mitigations in place for risks that you would see coming and they become issues, you are able to make very quick decisions because you have already made a plan for those things. Action beats perfection in execution. Nothing worse than getting into the execution phase and then a risk happens or some issue happens and you have no idea what to do and you spend 3 or 4 or 5 days or even a week trying to figure it out. The goal is not a perfect path. It's resilience and progress. Okay. Then lastly, you're going to have value-driven execution. Execution is not about just doing things. It's about delivering things. Again, it's value over activity. So you're going to ask yourself, are we staying true to the project's purpose? Are we doing what we're supposed to do? And are we working directly on actions that are tied to stakeholder value actions? Okay. Are we creating outcomes, not just outputs? What if you were like a paper factory? Imagine that. Like you're a paper factory and your job is just to create paper. And you create paper, but you don't know whether people are using it or not. There's a difference between that and saying, I'm going to do actions that create things that people will use. Okay. This is where the Pinbox 7th edition value delivery focus really becomes the lens for decision making. You really want to be looking at those things. So you're going to try to cut out that noise. You're going to keep that team aligned, and you're going to say yes to things that are only strengthen the value path. Okay. If it doesn't make sense and doesn't deliver value, try to avoid that work. Okay. So some final thoughts on this before we get going is that execution is where real leadership becomes alive. Okay. It's where you really start to deliver things into the project, and you're going to be navigating uncertainty. You're going to resolve conflicts and you're going to adapt just about every other day or every day, but with clarity, communication, and a focus on value. You're going to lead your team, but from the point where you created vision to the point where you deliver results. And so here go probably about 6 or 7 key takeaways. And let's say 6. You're going to lead visibly and you're going to lead consistently, which means people see you leading and making decisions and taking the heat for the decisions that are good and bad. Okay. You're going to communicate more than you think you need to. If you think that I've got to communicate every other week, communicate every week. If it's every week, communicate every couple of days. Okay. Communicate. And then you're going to want to guard the scope and stay grounded in the project's purpose. If it's not in the statement of work or it's not in scope, you're going to want to try to avoid that at all costs. And if you can't, and you reasonably believe that you should be doing the work, then try to have a contract modification in place so that you're covered and it's created as an amendment to the scope of work, statement of work. And you're going to want to keep your stakeholders engaged and informed, track your progress against their outcomes, not just what you're doing, and then make decisions through the lens of value delivery. If I'm doing things and it matters, then I'm going to do it. If I'm doing things and they don't really deliver value, is this step really necessary? That's it for this episode. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure to leave a review. Don't forget to share this show with your friends and colleagues and provide us some recommendations on how we can improve the podcast. And if you have any specific topics you'd like to discuss, send them our way. If you'd like more information on how to engage with me directly, you can head over to kalina-vision.com. That's KALYN as in Nancy A-vision.com. And you can also catch me on YouTube at Beyond the Glare or your favorite podcast platform to learn more and see how we can help you and your team get to the next level. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time.